Felicitous greetings, fellow fanatics. There's something about Metroidvanias. Starting out all alone with little to nothing to help you along in the world, slowly gaining upgrades and abilities that give you new tricks, giving you not only more power and options in battle, but also allowing you to slowly explore more of the world around you. There's a sense of satisfaction as battles that were once overwhelming eventually become trivial, and yet, nonetheless, new challenges that will push you to your limits wait just around the next corner. Hello everyone, I'm Adam the Fanatic, also known as Mario Fanatic 15, and today we're going to be looking at Otto by Tiny Warrior Games. Otto is a samurai-themed Metroidvania with a pixel art aesthetic and silent storytelling. I suppose I could have redone my Knights of the East intro for this, but this is the first opportunity I've had to do a Metroidvania, and I wanted to make sure I gave the genre the attention that it deserves. In Otto, you'll take control of Shin, a former thug that's left his sordid past behind to start a family. But this doesn't sit too well with his old gang, who attacks his home while he's away, kidnapping his daughter Meiko. After taking a brief moment to make sure that his wife Masami isn't injured, Shin rushes off to chase down the brutes, armed only with the sword at his side. In true Metroidvania fashion, Otto combines a mixture of exciting combat against fierce bosses with segments of exploration where you try to figure out how to traverse the world around you. At the onset, you'll have nothing more than the ability to jump and a standard sword slash, but this quickly changes as you progress and find various upgrades. While you'll have some standard holdovers of the genre like a dash and a double jump, make no mistake, this game doesn't merely tread the beaten trail over again with tried and true abilities we're all used to seeing. There are 4 main abilities you'll gain over the course of the game, 2 of which are pretty different from what I've seen in other Metroidvanias. Firstly, you have an Iaijutsu, or Quick Draw ability, with which you'll be able to lock onto targets and charge at them. This is one of the most essential mechanics in the game, as it not only allows you to get to otherwise out-of-reach locations, but is also used along with careful timing to disrupt an opponent's stance. In most boss fights, enemies will have a point in their attack animations where they flash. If you use a Quick Draw in this small window of time, you'll toss the enemy into the air, allowing you an attempt to combo them with multiple hits before they land. You'll later upgrade this ability, allowing you to chain multiple jumps together, which again is equally useful both in traversing the terrain and battling against your enemies. The other 3 abilities you can acquire in any order, 2 of which are pretty typical. A Ground Pound, which does pretty much what you'd expect. This allows you to break barriers in addition to its basic use in battle. And secondly, you have a Shot Attack, which is used in various puzzles involving mirror-like surfaces to bounce them around, as well as can be used to disrupt enemy stances when you're not close enough to lock onto them for Iaijutsu. The last ability you get is another more unique one, a Whirlwind Attack which gives you just a bit of extra lift and reach. This is useful not only for comboing enemies once you've taken them into the air, but also for activating these pinwheels, which will use the attack to launch you high into the air. By using these abilities in combination with one another, you'll not only be able to better explore the world around you, but also be able to find optional upgrades which aren't required to beat the game. There are a lot of collectibles in this relatively short game. 36 health shards, which can give you up to 5 times your starting health if you collect them all, 32 of these coins that unlock various doors when you gather enough of them, 6 runes, which you can choose to equip one of and swap them out at save points, and upgrades for all of your combat abilities. Most of these are optional, but that's part of the fun of a Metroidvania. You can explore the world to your heart's content and find a bunch of upgrades, or if you prefer, you can make a beeline for what's essential and attempt to beat the final boss with little more than your basic abilities. Of course, along the way you'll come across quite a number of enemies, most of which will be one-on-one duels against bosses. There are exceptions to this, but normal enemies out in the field are rare, and just weaker versions of bosses you've fought previously that can be defeated in a hit or 2. Boss fights against multiple characters exist as well, but again are relatively rare. Most boss fights are pretty unique, once more, with only a few exceptions. You'll find that the majority of bosses are unlike one another, each with their own patterns to memorize and learn to counter. I'm certainly not going to go into all of them here, but just to name a few, you have a Berserker that uses a pair of blades to relentlessly attack you, a Spearman which will test you with his advanced range, a Doppelganger which will use your own strength against you, and a Bandit which fights with traps, poison, and even throws sand in your eyes in an attempt to blind you. Shin may be honorable, but his foes most certainly are not. Occasionally you'll come across these optional gauntlets, boss rushes where you'll face a number of foes, most of which reappear from other parts of the game, but even each of these has a foe that's exclusive to them. Exploration and combat alike are quite impressive, making for very solid gameplay. But the game doesn't only play great, it looks and feels great too. don't be fooled by the screenshots. While they're by no means ugly, they really don't do the game justice. Small, subtle movements to the foregrounds and backgrounds give a very natural feel to grass and trees alike. Parallax scrolling makes it seem like you're running through lush forests, full of trees, and over grassy plains that go on for miles. The music fits perfectly with the mood and theme, and each boss has their own unique track that's not quite like any others. There's quite a bit here. Despite the game's brevity, it has well over 2.5 hours of music. And then there's the story. I'm not going to go into a separate segment here, as it is a silent tale and thus much is left open to interpretation. I will say, however, that there's great detail put into the animation, and I wouldn't be at all surprised to find out that the designer has studied silent film. Simple though the plot is, it does a great job of telling the tale that it wants to tell. It's not a deep plot by any stretch of the imagination, but it knows how to weave a story nonetheless. So now you might be wondering, how does this compare to Dust and Elysian Tale? They're both Metroidvanias where you play as a samurai fox, and honestly, that's about where the comparison ends. Other than their genre, they're really only alike on the most superficial level. And let's be honest, despite having a samurai-inspired outfit, Dust really isn't a samurai at all. Dust goes the RPG route, where you collect experience to level up and a bunch of equipment that gives various stat boosts. Whereas in Auto, you empower yourself purely by the items hidden throughout the world. Dust goes for high-definition hand-drawn sprites, while Auto goes for a more traditional style of pixel art. They're both great games in their own ways, but beyond first glance, they're actually quite different. All in all, Auto is a short but very well-crafted game. I finished my first run at 5.5 hours without a guide my first time through, and the only thing I was missing was a single hidden item in that time frame. I played on the Experience difficulty, which is the hardest that the game will allow for on your first run, though upon beating the game, you unlock 3 additional difficulties: Bushido, Hell, and a unique setting where both you and enemies alike will all die in a single hit. On Experience, I found the game to be fairly challenging. There were some later boss fights I had to retry up to a half dozen times, but nothing ever felt unfair or overwhelming. It was simply a matter of figuring out how to properly approach enemies. And despite its brevity, I don't feel there's any major faults I can find with the game. Exploration and combat alike combine both familiar concepts and new ideas to make something that's unique but not obtuse or unwieldy. Combat always feels fresh, since you're not fighting the same enemies over and over again. The game looks and sounds great, painting a picture of the landscape before you. The only real downside to the game is its short playtime, but I'll gladly take a well-crafted game that lasts only a handful of hours over a painfully bland title that just doesn't know when to stop. With all these factors combined, I find Auto to be an excellent title, worthy of no less than a 9.4 out of 10. If you're interested in purchasing Auto, a link to the game's Steam page is provided in the description. Thank you for watching. I'm surprised it's taken me this long to review a Metroidvania. What are some of your favorites of the genre? If you have any questions, remarks, or opposing points of view, be sure to leave them in the comments down below, and please remember to like, share, subscribe, and ring that bell. Auto to Auto, Dust to Dust. Thank you again for watching. I have plenty more to share with you if you're interested. You can click up here above my head to subscribe to my channel. You can click over here on my monitor to see the most recent video that I've worked on. Or if you prefer, you can click up here to open this mysterious vault and see what video that the YouTube algorithm has picked just for you.